G'day, legends. G'day, superstars. It's Peps, and I'm bringing you the 2024 Week 2 semi-finals review for a massive weekend of AFL football. People, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what a cracking 2 games of football that we experienced. And I'm the host, Chris Pepper. You'll notice that I'm going hand solo tonight because the superstar himself, Jamie the Jdog Wallace, isn't joining us tonight. He's over in the beautiful area of Bali. We're just letting him taking it easy. He's had a massive season and his team's in a prelim. And so we're just got to give the young fella a bit of an opportunity to just relax, take it easy, and enjoy his time with his beautiful family. But I'm here to take you through everything that was a cracking weekend of AFL football. And I am bringing back a segment that we have not had for many, many months. I will be spinning some magnets, but we'll also have a crack about some brilliant games of football. What caught my eye, non-trademark infringement on Channel 9 there, but also just my thoughts and feelings of 2 massive weeks of footy, and also to have a bit of a chat about 2 cracking prelims that we're going to be getting into this week as well too. So if you haven't joined us before, what's taken you? We've only been going for 7 years. And we weren't able to join us. But more importantly, I'm here. That's what we're going to be talking about, footy. I'm Peps. And, I'm not having my co-host with the most here has thrown me a little bit as well too. But the Jdog is on the chat, so it's good to see him all the way from Bali. He's good to see he's taking some time away to join us on the chat. He's already asking, it's Ken ball over Hock ball. I've got lots to get into, and I can't wait to do so. Rightio, 2 cracking AFL semi-finals were played during the week. The Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn game, we know that the Port Adelaide got the win over 3 points. I got to watch this game live at my mate's house, and it went absolutely cocoa bananas. That is how cracking this game was, and some massive takeouts from that. And you thought, could it get any better than that? Well, we got into the Saturday night game, and you could say it was almost as good, if not better, with the GWS taking out the Lions for 2.5 quarters, 44 points. Game's over, done and dusted, go to bed, put on the notebook for the 50th time, gents. And then the Brisbane Lions came back to win it by 5 points in a massive boil over. And we're going to be getting into it right away because these 2 games, you could almost say, was the best couple of semi-finals football that we have seen. I can't remember 2 games so different, yet so impactful on and off the field as well too. And I want to have a chat about it right away. But before we do, I said that I'm going to be bringing back some magnets, and we are going to spin the magnets for the first time in a long time for both games as well too. So we're back. Don't know what happened. We just lost everything everything just dropped out. Might have been a connection. Not too sure. Anyway, let's get into spinning some magnets because there were lots of stories to come out of a cracking weekend of AFL footy. And I want to start with the Friday night game. Let's start with the 3 votes. Let's go with the 3 votes. 3 votes. First and foremost, balls to the wall contested footy. Now, I know we love to see high scoring. That's true. We love scoring games, but we also like to see a bit of defensive pressure in games as well too. And the game on the weekend was an absolute ball terror. These 2 teams put on 300 contested possessions between them. Now, I want to just put this in perspective. These 2 teams combined averaged 261 for the year. So this was a contested feast fest. When you got people like Wines, Rosie, Newcomb, Warple, just nose to the grindstone football, it was fucking sensational. And I loved every single minute. It was hard contest. Butters copped it from Kane Corns saying that he was, needs to hit the contest harder. And I thought Port, after what they showed the week before against the Cats, were going to be in all sorts. But within 5 minutes, this was a different Port Adelaide. And it goes to show that put a bit of pressure on the young bodies of the Hawks. It did start to tell. I wouldn't be too worried about what the final margin was, because I think this game should have been maybe 5 or 6 goals by the end of it. Just bad kicking by Port Adelaide in a couple of situations. But it was cracking hard finals football, and that's what it was all about. And Jdog put this perfectly. It was Ken ball over Hock ball, and I agree 100%. It was an absolute corker. Loved what it did. And it just goes to show that Simon Goodwin's had his knockers for quite a while. He was onto something, that you do need to have still contested footy, regardless of how free-flowing. And if you think about it, probably the two best free-flowing teams in the league this year, one got through and the other one got through. And I was about to say GWS didn't, but they did. So Lions and Hawks, interestingly enough, completely fudge that. Ignore it. Rightio. Jace Burgoyne. What an absolute gun he was over the weekend. Now, there's one thing about Jace Burgoyne. If you have a look at him, he's probably weighing about 65 kilos soaking wet. And the other thing about him, though, is if you have a look at him in the way he was playing, he was a needle in the haystack. Like, he was that thin compared to just the beasts that were around him. But he was the sharpest in that haystack, and he was magnificent. He was BOG from my perspective for the whole game. His courageous marking, his run off halfback, he was putting himself into positions that he shouldn't have been putting himself into. That is how good he was going over that particular night. And when he kicked that goal to virtually seal them the victory with the massive hand that Willie Rioli got his hand into as well, it was just awesome. Awesome to see. And I loved every single moment of it. And he just played an absolute corker, a cracker of a game. And it just goes to show that you don't have to be the biggest beast on the park. If you're willing to have a crack, which he did, Jace Burgoyne. Now, the thing is, he needs to follow it up this week. This is the week that it really needs to stand out against a tough team in Sydney. If you can do it 2 weeks in a row, this is where legacies start to be built. And if you want to be known as a gun, you need to be known as a gun when it comes to finals football. And he put his foot down on that one. Another guy in this game that I've probably given a bit of stick over the year. I didn't see it, but the Wizard. You could not have asked for 2 better performances from a first-year player in his first ever final series. He was accurate where a lot of other players weren't. He took his opportunities where a lot of other players didn't. Kicked 7 goals in 2 games, which was the highest so far outside of Jesse Hogan. And he has got a bright future, way better than Ginnivan, and he's the one who got all the raps over the weekend. Definitely better than Willie Rioli, but Willie Rioli played a really good game from a offensive / defensive forward perspective as well too. So keep that in mind. But he was awesome, and he has got a really bright future. And when he got picked up at the start of the year, there was a lot of raps on this kid. I finally got to see why. I still wouldn't call him the Wizard. Jeff Farmer is the Wizard. You've got to earn that mantra. But he's got a massive future, and I reckon they've picked an absolute corker with it when it comes to him as well too. So good work on the Hawks recruiting team picking him up, because he and Ginnivan down there, small forwards, I think are going to be, I said it last week, big forwards, don't spend your money on big forwards anymore. Small forwards and defensive halfbacks, that's where your money needs to be these days. Rightio. Got to unfortunately give the Healy off, Ellingworth on. Got to give this one a bit of a spray. I don't know how many times throughout this entire year I've gone on questionable umpiring decisions. And there were 2 so close to each other in the Hawthorn forward line. Defensive for sling tackles, dangerous tackles, which almost turned the tide of the game. It actually did change the flow of the game as well too. Absolutely staggering that one of them didn't hit his head. The other one did. Now, I just don't understand the whole makeup of this rule. If it's a dangerous tackle, is it dangerous because it could have caused injury or it did cause injury? Because none of those guys went off with an injury. If it's the action itself, is that a reportable offense? And there was one of them that, like, I think I've gone blank. who it was. I know it was the All-Australian forward pocket. He actually caused it more himself by throwing his head. More, sorry. Yet, because the umpire was on the back of the contest, he just assumed that the head hit the ground, and it's a very big penalty for a hearsay, theresay type of offence. So that really put a bit of a dampener on it from my perspective. I don't know what anyone else thought, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you're on the chat or whether you want to leave it in the comments on the Facebook page. But yeah, really disappointing from what I saw from the umpiring perspective, because it just goes to show that there has been a couple of instances where it does change the context of the game, and there's a perfect couple there. Todd Marshall, he hasn't had a great run of it. A lot of duck, no dinner, as they would say. I'm a bit concerned for him. He's had his 5th concussion in 3 years. Now, we're talking Brayshaw type concussions here. This is how many he's had, but you wouldn't put him in the same type of category. He has got some massive issues. He didn't even look like he was part of it when he was out there. Has he got a future? Does he keep going? He's on a good contract, and we know the history of concussions. And I was having a conversation with someone today, and he said the same thing about Tim English. Ever since he's had his concussion, he's never been the same player. And I don't think Todd Marshall has been the same player since he started having a lot of these concussions as well too. So the danger of these long-term contracts is starting to bite clubs on the ass. Now, what do? Do they go bigger money for short-term? Or do they maybe start going longer-term but a lot less dollars? Because I don't think you can have both these days. And here's another example of it. Brayshaw's another example of it, where these players getting concussions and front-loaded contracts as well too, because they may have to medically retire because of what's happened to him. He's a massive concern. I don't know what Port Adelaide are going to do with him. He's not going to be too much of a loss because he didn't do much on the weekend, let's be honest. But that is a big one. The other big one, and this is not even player-related, is Ken Hinkley and his fine. 20 grand for giving Ginnivan and putting him, standing up for his team and putting the young kid in his place. What a complete overreaction by the AFL. This is an overreaction to what happened a week ago in the GWS Sydney game. And the AFL have now created a massive rod for their back. So they're basically saying if an opposition coach says anything to a player, they are going to get fined. What about the other way? What about if a player says anything to a coach? Are they going to get fined? Because that hasn't been actually said. Sicily said something to Kenny, nothing there. So where does it sit? Where does it sit? Is it only one way? And where's this money going to as well? It's just another overreaction that the AFL do when it didn't need to be done. It was in the heat of the moment. He's apologized for it. It's just the AFL being complete knobs like they normally are. And they've just put another black mark against the stupidity that this league has been in for the last couple of years. He didn't deserve it, and he did the right thing. So I'll stick up for you, Kenny. But yeah, I give you that as a Healy off, because it was a stupid decision by the AFL. All they had to do was say, hey, mate, you're just not doing that again. You're copping another fine if it is. So I'll leave that as is. Rightio. Let's get into the Saturday night game, because that was an absolute corker. Who would have thought that halfway through the second quarter, 44 points up, GWS would have absolutely screwed the pooch, and Brisbane come back from where they were. Jesse Hogan, got to give him the 3 votes. Tell me a better story than this bloke. Had a really good start at the D's. His last season at the D's, he had an injury. He had his cancer scare. His father passed away. Didn't end up on a good note. Fell out of favour, which was stupid. Went over to Fremantle and almost ruined his career over there at Fremantle. Wanted to get back home. GWS took the punt on this bloke. Every man his dog said it was a stupid decision. And what's come out of it is a guy that has not only cemented a Coleman medal for himself, he also had the most contested marks in the forward 50, or most marks in the forward 50 in, I think, over 20 years, could be close to 30 years. And it just goes to show if you're willing to be in the right environment and you've got the right people around you, you can turn your career around. And I'm so bloody proud of that guy because I loved him when he was in Melbourne, and I just have a vested interest in him, and I just love the way that he has handled his football. He's a no fuss. He's just a footballer, and he deserves all the plaudits. And I would love to have seen him play in a prelim because he deserved to be there. His team deserved to be there, except they just don't know how to finish games off. Based on that, it was a comeback for the ages. 44 points. It's the second highest in AFL VFL history, and they deserve to be in a prelim. Now, they've got a lot of work to do to take on Geelong, but I don't think they're scared of Geelong anymore. They've had their wins down at the MCG. Their last two finals have been at the MCG. They've won both of those. Funny enough, both against sorry, I won't say both. They played Melbourne there this year, won that. They've played Melbourne at the G in a final. They've won that. They've got some spunk about them as well too. And they've got a lot of, I think they've got from their bottom rung of players, which I'll get into in a moment, they've got a lot of growth in that area as well too. If those guys find a little bit more form, there'll be a bit more spunk to come out of them as well too. So I think they're in a really good position, and they'll take a lot of belief out of what they did last week against GWS for that. And one of those guys was Will Ashcroft. He is going to be a gun. Now, he's the son of Marcus Ashcroft, who was a gun for the Brisbane Lions and also Fitzroy. It was his second ever final, second season. You got to also remember, this guy's coming off an ACL, and his first game was I think it was like a couple of weeks ago. So he's playing his second final. He's come in, and this young cub turned into a hunter killer before our eyes. When Brisbane needed someone to stand up and take the game on, he was the one to do it. And he was magnificent. And there was one contested possession or contested moment where he took on about 3 or 4 players, kicked it, and Charlie Cameron got the boot onto it. But it was all him. And if you go through the highlights, pretty much halfway through that second third quarter onwards, he was the man who pretty much stood up and led them to victory. So you could say it was Danaher. You could say it was Harris Andrews down back getting a little bit more control down there. You could say it was Zorko coming off halfback. That guy, Will Ashcroft, will be an absolute gun, and he's a future captain of that team. He is just everything that you want in a young player. So kudos to him. All right. It was a missed opportunity. Let's unfortunately, the negative side of things, it was a missed opportunity by GWS. They had their opportunities to win it. Now, people have poked their finger at the Daniels off the ground in the goal square opportunity. I wouldn't look at that one specifically. You got to look at the missed goals by Toby Green, the missed goals by Jesse Hogan, the missed goals by Lockie Keefe in front of goals, set shots that would have extended that lead at that moment in time, and they were all missed. And that just left the door open. Bad kicking is bad football. It left the door open. 44 points should have had the door shut, but they left it just a little bit ajar, and that's what occurred. And unfortunately, they should be playing in a prelim this week, and they didn't. Some tamed Lions, though. There was players like Raynor, Hipwood, Wilmot, Payne, Morris. They all had under 10 possessions. Now, for 2 of those, Raynor, he could turn a final like that. He definitely needs to lift. Hipwood has had another poor final. That's 2 weeks in a row. He can't do it 3 because he's starting to get a bit of a reputation of play one good one and then go missing for another 5 or 6 weeks. Play one good one, go missing for another 5 or 6 weeks. If he's cut his hair, he's tried to do a bit of the reverse Samson. It hasn't worked. He needs to take the pressure off. And against a Geelong backline that are not just 1 or 2 deep, they're 5, 6, 7 deep. He needs to lift. Otherwise, they're going to find it a very, very difficult avenue to score. And it'll be put back on him. It won't be put on Danaher because you'll bust his nuts throughout it. It won't be Berry. Raynor needs to lift as well too. He had another quiet final. So these are the guys that need to take that extra step. And once again, I have to say the Giants were killed. The Giants were slaughtered. I don't know where Jack was, but the Giants were killed because it's just another situation 2 weeks in a row where they've been 5 goals up in a prelim. 5 goals up in a final and lost. And they did everything right once again for 2.5 quarters. Last week it was 2 quarters, and they screwed the pooch. They don't know how to finish games off. They went into save mode way too early, and as soon as you took the pressure off the Lions went, this is what we like. We're a lot more free. We get the ball and we turn it over, and it made it an absolute nightmare for them as well too. So they need to look at how they finish games off, because for 2.5 quarters, they were sensational, but they let teams in. They were the 13th worst last quarter team in the league. Funny enough, though, the Brisbane Lions were the 15th worst, and they completely flipped the script on that one. So I don't know where I didn't see it coming. And I said that if it got to halftime and they were behind, they were going to find it really, really hard. What I didn't expect was for GWS to take their foot off the throat as much as they did to let them back in. So there's the magnets, there's the votes, there's the Healy drag. I want to go through some of the comments that have come in off the chat whilst I've been going through my magnets as well too. So the J-Dogs come in with this. The fact that we won with players that are in the 25 to 30 list range, having to rebuild a back six against a rampaging Hawthorn. My God, it was pretty good. They did everything right that they could have asked for. Now, whether they're going to be able to do it again against Sydney, I think they've got a better chance than Brisbane, but they're going to have to do everything right. Who comes in for Marshall? Is Farrell going to be right? I don't know, because this will be 3 weeks since it'll be 4 weeks since his hamstring injury. So will he be right? I don't know. But you're going to be losing Marshall, remember, because of the concussion. So there's something in that. The early end to the snow season is a true travesty of Peps. Look, I'm not a skier, but apparently it has been an early finish. We don't normally know what ski season is, Jolly, over the last number of years, because our boys have made finals. For this year, yep, it looks like, unfortunately, we could have hit the slopes, but it looks like the ski season has finished up. It hasn't been too good. So for those of the skiers, apologies. You're just going to have to watch the footy. Cats are so professional. We'll win and go all the way. Big call by Mossy here. Now, I did have a chat to Mossy about this today. He said just they're so clinical across the ground. He is right. The Brisbane Lions are going to pretty much have to do everything. They're going to have to take the game on from woe to go. Stop the midfield. I think they got the clincher on, but at both ends of the ground, that's where they're going to be found out. They're going to have to stop the high half forwards who run up the ground. They're going to have to stop Myers. They're going to have to stop Close. They're going to have to stop Howes as well too. They've just got so many running options. Stengel, another one, and then they're going to have to stop the massive back line. You've got Kolodjasny. You're going to have Stewart back there. You've got Henry back there. You're going to have to defensively either work them up and down the ground, or you're going to have to lock down on them. And I don't know whether Brisbane have the forwards who can mentally do that. I'm looking at Danaher and I'm looking at Hipwood, and I'm probably saying they're going to have to probably more control the game than control their players. Can't trust the Lions forward line to do the job everywhere. I've already said that I can't trust Eric Hipwood. I can trust their medium forwards. I just don't trust at the moment. I just don't trust that Hipwood's going to be able to deliver. And based on the last couple of weeks, I don't know if Rayner's going to be able to deliver as well. Stranger things have happened, but they really do need to pull the finger out this week. Jolly Michael, Lions, no chance in Melbourne in final 0. Zilch, nada, Swans spank the power 2. Big words. I think if I had to look at which game I reckon is going to be closer, I reckon the Swans game will be closer just because it's on a bit of a smaller field. I think the Power will like the in and under type game. And I think that they'll feel that they can match up against their forwards a little bit better as well too. I think that the Lions, if their forwards don't fire, they're definitely going to find it really difficult to stop. And we know what Geelong's forward line brings every single week. So they're going to have to be at the forefront. And Harris Andrews needs to pick up the number 1 forward this week. He didn't do that against Hogan, and it almost cost them a chance at the premiership. So the coaches really need to put a lot of work into who is going to pick up the Geelong forwards, because they didn't do it right last week against the Power. Against GWS, and it almost cost them. Bo Hawkins, how good are the Kangas at footy in the waffle? Don't know. I don't follow the waffle all that much, so you might have to give me a bit of info on that one. If Joe is the Forrest Gump of the comp, the Lions are the box of chocolates and could win it. He's actually got a fair point there. Yeah. Look, they're going to have to do a lot right. Did they spend all their petrol tickets last week getting back into the game? I don't know. The question is, do you trust them? Do you trust the Lions enough? And this is what I'm going with my prelim picks this week. When I look at both teams, and I'll start getting into it as well too, because they're going to be two cracking games of footy. Who do you trust? Who do you trust? That's what I'm basing my opinion on. Oh, the AFLW. Oh, well, the AFLW girls are absolutely smacking it at the moment from the Kangas perspective. Can't ask for much more than that. Maybe they should get a few of the AFLW girls to play with the AFL men, and maybe they could get their guys up a little bit higher on the ladder as well too. Might be an option there, Bo, but I'll leave that one with you as well too, because we don't discriminate here on Lace Out, because it's how you want your footy, male or female like. All right. So what I'd like to do is I want to have a bit of a quick chat about the prelims kicking into this week. It is going to be a bit of a shorter show because there's only really 2 games to talk about. But if anything does come up on the chat, definitely bring it up. So we've got 2 prelims going into this particular weekend of footy, and I'm really, really excited for them, to be honest. I really think that the Friday night game is going to be an absolute corker. The Sydney-Port Adelaide game, you've got 2 teams that love contested footy. You've got 2 teams that love to be hard at it. I do think Sydney will win. And the reason why, simply because they've had that extra week off. Their list is getting back to full tilt. Horst Longmire and the crew would have been planning for both teams. And now they know for a week now that they've been playing Port Adelaide, they'll have their plans intact. No Marshall, no Dixon, no Houston, no Farrell from the last time that they played. Could be almost too much to cover. And I just think that they're going to be just a little bit too strong through their forwards as well too. And when I say that, it's more that you've got McCartan, you've got Haywood, you've got Logan McDonald, you've got Joel Amadi. Like, you've got 4 big guys. You've got Papley down forward as well. They aren't going to make it easy at all for they're not going to make it easy for the Port Adelaide side of things. Now, if Georgiades has another game like he did last week, and he should have been in the 3 votes as well too, because I thought he was exceptional, especially early on when it was going tough and the heat was on the ball. He was leading up the ground. He was clunking and kicking as well too. He needs another game like that. He just needs to have Radaglia out of his way. If I was me, I'd almost put Radaglia down back, have him at centre half back, and try and negate the supply that's coming in to the Sydney forward line. And try and maybe have a bit more chaos ball going into the Sydney back line. The worst thing that you could do is just sit it on top of the heads of the Sydney backs, because they'll just sit on those and pick them apart day in, day out. They don't like it like that. I would also say that just Port still relies so much on their midfield. If Rosie, if Horne-Francis, and if Butters don't fire, and we know that Sydney have the capability to clamp down with James Jordan, with Rowbottom, they might find it difficult there. So I'm definitely going with Sydney to win this one. I think it'll be close, but there'll be no more than 3 goals. I'll be going into my detailed tips a little bit more later in the week, but I'm going with Sydney by no more than 3 goals. Now, normally, if you have a look at the history over the prelim finals over the last probably 10 or so years, what normally happens is you have a close game and then you have a blowout game. And I think if I looked at these games, I reckon the blowout game could be the Geelong-Brisbane game. I really do think this could be the blowout game. Now, that's no disrespect to Brisbane. It's just that I think Geelong have just timed their run so well. They're literally stacked across the board. They beat Port by 84 points the week before. And now they're bringing Tom Stewart back in as well. Like, they're just adding more bullets into the chamber. That's how well that they're going. Their forward line is in great nick. They've got such a spread of goal kickers. I don't think Brisbane can contain them all. Their midfield is obviously a bit of their Achilles heel, but they tend to push, like I said, their high half forwards up the ground a little bit more. And so it does give that opportunity for not just your main four midfielders to be running around. They've got 5 or 6, 7 around the ball that do run both ways really hard to give them that support. So I think that that's something. Brisbane's midfield is a lot, I think, better, but I think across the whole ground, Geelong are just going to be more consistent and have more weapons at their disposal as well, too. You got to remember, you've got Stengel, you've got Cameron, you've got Dangerfield could run down there for goals. We've spoken about Close. We've spoken about Myers. You got Howes on the wing. You've got, and then you go to their back line, Collar Jasny. You've got Stewart, who's going to be coming back into that as well, too. They're just going to be able to work the ground so much more. And I've just got a feeling that Brisbane would have put in so much effort to get into the game last week. They've only got a 6-day turnaround for this. They've only got a 6-day turnaround for this one. They're not going to have as many petrol tickets left off. And I just think it could get a little bit of a blowout. Sorry, they're going to have a week. Sorry, it's not just the Friday. They're playing on the Saturday. So I think this one could get extended out quite a little bit. And that's why I'm going with Geelong. And I reckon this one could go maybe 5 or 6 goals in the end. I think we're going to have the close one on the Friday night. The Saturday night, I will be going to that prelim, and I can't wait for it. I love just finals time. Does not matter who is playing. I just think Geelong are going to be just way too strong. And they've just timed their run beautifully towards the back end of the season. The interesting thing, if you have a look at the percentages, the way that they finished at the end of the year, Geelong had the 7th best percentage towards the end of the year. So they don't score heavily, but they don't get heavily scored against. They're really consistent. Sydney score really well, but they've had some big losses as well, especially the one against Port, 112 points a number of weeks ago. Okay. GWS, they're a little bit flaky as well too. So there's a lot of things when you look at Geelong, it's just their consistency across the board where I rate them a hell of a lot. Bo Hawkins, another great point. I don't trust Port or Brisbane. So it'll be a replay of the 2004 grand final, and it could have the most points kicked in grand final history. That's a really good point. It's actually going to be a repeat of the 2004. 2004. It doesn't report or Brisbane. So that means it's going to be Geelong and 2004 wasn't. 2004? No. That wasn't the 2004 grand final. Geelong and Sydney. Maybe you meant the 2021 grand final, 2022 grand final. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're going to have a replay of, the 2022 grand final. Exactly right. Is Chris Scott the best coach in AFL history if they win the flag again? Mossy, this is actually a really good point. And I know we had a bit of a chat about this today as well too. If he gets another grand final, that'll be his 3rd. That now puts him into that is in Dimmer Hardwick side of things as well too. Yeah, I think that if he wins this, if you have a look at his catalogue over the time he's been in there since 2011, so we're looking 2011 to 2024, that's 14 seasons. I think Geelong have missed the finals once, and I think there's been like 11 out of 14 prelim finals made. And he's rejuvenated the list. And you have a look at those teams that won grand finals and the team he took over, where a lot of teams have gone backwards in their rebuilds, etc. He has taken it to another level. And he's been able to rejuvenate teams. Like I've said it, Jdog not as much. I've said they're going to the retirement home for so long. And he just has this capability to bring in these kids that have either been discarded or they've been playing VFL or they're low draft picks. And he just is, they're able, that development system down there does something that no other club can do. And he is just able to just bring him. This is the role that you're going to play. This is all we need you to do. If you do it, you will play and you will win. And that is why it is going to be a Sydney Geelong grand final. I can't wait to see what happens. I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same as it was a couple of weeks ago or a couple of years ago, but I'm just fascinated to see how it is going to go. And if he does get that third flag, there is no way you can't say, because he'll be a 3-time premiership player. He'll be a 3-time premiership coach. At 6 flags, I don't know how many people have got 6 flags in their life. Oh, no, I didn't get any. So I think you got something right there, big dog. I think he is going to be a massive, massive chance. All right. So, funny enough, I think we're almost done. Now, normally Jdog's with me, and we'll be going into a few things, but there's not really much. With 2 games, there's some off-field talk. You know, you've got Zach Merritt being chased by the Saints. I don't think that's going to happen. You've got Dusty looking to go into the Suns. Don't think that's really going to happen. Craigie Wessels all the way from the US of A says people thought the Cats were crazy for holding out on that pick in the extra 60s in the 2023 draft. Turns out it was Lawson Humphreys, and he's making one hell of a contribution to the club this year. Lawson Humphreys 2 weeks ago, when he was coming out of the back line, I did not know which foot he kicked on. And that's what I was saying, Craig. They got something that I don't know how they do it. I know when you started watching AFL, you needed to find a team. You found an absolute belter with the Cats. My best mate is a Cat supporter. Like, he's just got a smile on his face. I wouldn't say they're arrogant, but they've got a right to be arrogant because they piss excellence. They piss excellence, Geelong. And I know every other team in the league, outside of probably the Swans, would love to be in their position. They just piss excellence. They win flags. And if they don't win flags, we're not bottoming out. We're going to pick another one. And we're going to go for another one. We're going to go for another one. And they're amazing. If anyone knows the Essendon District Football League, there's a team called Keeler out here. Baldwin probably in the EFL. They just don't stop. They just go for flag after flag after flag. And I'm jealous as buggery. And I know there's probably a lot of people out there that are jealous as buggery that their team would be winning them as well too. So, there's just going to be lots of stories to come out, because this time next week we'll be going into a grand final. And I can tell you now, this is my big prediction. There will be a gun player that will miss a grand final this week due to concussion protocols. And then the real discussion about having the week break before the grand final will come into play even bigger than it has before. Last question before we wrapped up, and I'd love to hear what people have said. Real question. Are the supporters of Melbourne-based clubs deep down a bit jealous of the Cats' success and why they always sledge on them? Okay. So I don't think the reason why we sledge on the Cats is because if you have a look at their profile, they've got a lot. They still do a lot of over 30s. History says that going forward, those teams fall over. Just happens when you have an older team, whether it's an Australian cricket team, with any other AFL team, rugby league, lacrosse, basketball, you name it. When you have a good portion of your list in your 30s, it tends to fall away. Collingwood are a prime example. A lot of players in their 30s fell away this year. All right. This year, Geelong, a lot of players in their 30s, yet still have those kids to rejuvenate through. And we sit back going, we dismiss this mob week after week, year after year, and somehow they're still able to come out and dominate. And by God, we're jealous. We're jealous of the fact that they make a ton of money at every home game. They get given everything by the government. They are just awesome at what they do. And they're fantastic in the way that they play their footy. And the way the club is run is exceptional as well. You hardly hear any infighting. You hardly hear any off-field antics. Tyson Stengel outside, but we won't go into that. We're jealous of them because of how professional they are. And my club behind me won a flag 2 or 3 years ago and have already lost their professionalism. And there's a lot of other clubs that seem to have kinks in their armor all the time, and the Cats aren't one of them. And that's why we're jealous. We're jealous of they basically got a home ground advantage because their ground is so unique to everybody else. And they're just amazing at just continually winning and making finals. Geelong supporters don't know what the snow looks like. They can't go down because their Septembers are always booked with finals, unlike a lot of other clubs that follow lace out week in, week out. So I think that they've got a lot of positives that a lot of clubs wish they had, and because they don't have it, that's why we get jealous of them. We're envious of them, I'd probably say, more than jealous. We're jealous because of their success, but we're envious because we want that within our own clubs, and we just can't do it. And they don't seem very egotistical as well. I like the way that Scotty's handled himself as a coach. I think he's even changed a little bit. He's honest. He says it how it is. And I think we respect that. Just like you respect us here at Lace Out, because we pretty much say it how it is as well too. So that's a really good question. Rightio. Wrapping this one up, I will be delivering my tips for this week's prelim final. So stay tuned for that. Also, I'm throwing this one out there. If you want to co-host the show with me next week, drop me a message in the chat. Because I don't know if Jamie's going to be able to do it from Bali on the massage table with his bintang. So if you want to have a shot at the title, join me, leave a note on our Facebook page. But I'm Peps. It's how you want your footy. It's Lace Out. And more importantly, thank you for tuning in. And it's been a little bit weird. It's been a little bit weird for me because I haven't had to do it by myself for months. So I was a little bit rusty. But thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week. And hopefully, if your team is winning this week, good luck. If not, enjoy the footy. I'll be there. Can't wait to tell you about it. Thanks a lot, listeners.